Hello and welcome back to this edition of Daily Actives brought to you by Bootleg Macro. I am Dustin. This is the show where we look at the most active stocks in Yahoo Finance every single day. We're going to look at Nvidia. If you watched my previous video yesterday, I believe on the first here, I cover Nvidia and I specifically talk about how or what I want to see as we start to have like a breakout. All of the things that I mentioned in that video 9 days ago are kind of coming true. The reason why I'd say that is I was mentioning at the time about how we had extreme bullishness here in the summertime from May until it looks like the very middle of August on the 18th. We saw some bearishness and sideways action. At that time, on the first, we were just starting to see the price essentially get to the top of the range again. I expected the range to have higher highs, and then I was hoping that that it would flip bullish, where you can see the past 3 days in a row, we've now flipped bullish. As we look at the actual candlestick chart, you can see green lines are the bullishness, the red lines are the bearishness. The candles are just the candles. So you can see that we, again, lost that bullishness on the 18th. We went bearish as of the 19th of August. We essentially had this, like, what I would consider to be a basing pattern, and now it looks like the price is starting to break out higher. Yesterday on the video, I definitely called out that I need to see Nvidia close in the high one or in the low 190s at least sometime this week. If not this week, I'd like to see 200 by the end of the month or by November at least. Yeah, by the middle of November, I would say at the latest, but most likely probably before Halloween, just based on what the price is doing to confirm that we're continuing on in this bullish trend. The nice thing about what we've seen is this higher high that we're starting to see, and not just the top of the range, but also in the price of the stock, is being accompanied by higher volume. Now we haven't broken up above the average volume, which is 188 million, but you can definitely see that we've had lower volume leading up to today, and today was a very consequential move when it comes to the volume overall. If we look at the daily sentiment, what I like is that we saw that we were bullish back when it was very bullish in the summertime. When it went bearish very recently, you can see that we went bearish underneath this black line. The black line is the 50% line. So now that we've broken back up above the 50% line with a bullish breakout, I like that signal. As well as when we look at it on the 15-day, we can definitely see that it was setting itself up here. It broke up above the 50% line on the 7th, 54% on the 8th, and now 54.8 on the 9th. The thing that I would love to see is probably a sustained amount of volatility here, low volatility similar to what we saw in the summer. You can see again, when we're looking at this bullish sentiment that we saw from the middle of June till the middle of August, the volatility essentially was high. It would glide down. My big thing is that when you are seeing falling volatility, generally that is when you're going to see the trend reveal itself. And I love a low volatility bull market. I think those are the bull markets that I'm looking for. Now, if we're looking at the price correlation, it is slightly negative. It doesn't say it can strongly predict anything, but this is the price reaction to the volatility. So when it's slightly, it looks like it's neutral right now. It's not really doing anything, which means that we could definitely see that go negative, which is really, so it's negative when the volatility is falling. And that's when I believe trend reveals itself. That's when you get really low volatility bull markets. Now, if we're looking at NVIDIA from the data table perspective, we are now moderately high. You can see the color price volume guide up here. When we're looking at the price right now, we are moderately high, which means we're kind of close to the top of the range. The volume is in the normal range though, which is kind of good. I would like to see a really high volume breakout day when we probably break 200. So we'll find out. I imagine there'll be news that will support that. I don't know what it could be, but that's just how the market works. The top of the range is at 196. We can see we have a higher high, just like I was hoping for after we flip bullish. Now, if we look from the 1 day to the 5 day, the nice thing is that on the 1 month, we're not even up 10%, as well as we're barely up 12% on the 3 month. Now, the reason why I say that that's good is because if you look historically at what NVIDIA has been able to do, even when it was negative on the 1 month, you could see it up 20+% on the 3 month. So I think we've definitely got some more room to run here in terms of what I'm going to be doing. And full disclosure, I do own calls on NVIDIA. Let's go ahead and look at Plug. Plug continues to be an interesting stock in the market. I definitely covered this yesterday. One of the things that I've mentioned before, when you see these low volatility moves that turn bullish and then you see a massive breakout where the volatility rises and the range expands, is that when the price breaks up above, you want to see it consolidate for a little bit. Very recently, as on the 6th of this week, we've seen a complete breakout above the top of the range. You can see the close is at 413. The top of the range is at 410. The price has fallen back, but now today, obviously, we saw a nice up day relative to where it was or where we thought it could close. Now, if we wanted to see the higher high, obviously, it looks like the very high there is going to be 458. The close looks like was 413. Obviously, today we're closing at 378. So we're still down probably over the past 5 days, but things are looking much more positive, as though we have done our pullback, closed our gap, done whatever, and now we're starting to get a resumption. It is nice that we saw a nice day on higher volume. Now, it's not as high as you've seen at the very, very highs. Like, obviously, the second or the day before the second was the day when we, right, essentially when we got this massive like candle on the 6th, which ended up being that Monday. If we're looking at the sentiment, we are well above the 50% line. We're at 59.2. Even on the 15-day, we're still positive, even though we're falling. It's not really great that we're falling, but you would expect to kind of move like that with a pullback inside a plug. The volatility is my largest concern because eventually this thing has to peak. It's got to roll over at some point. What I would love to see is that it rolls over from a high level and very slowly, and I would say like over the course of probably like 2 months, actually just continues to fall, very similar to what it did here. You can see the peak in the middle of April, and we got to fall all the way down until the beginning of June. So that was about 6 weeks. I'd love to see a 6-week fall in volatility and then see a negative correlation in the price, because that would show me that the price could go sideways to up. When we're looking at where it is in the moderately high zone. The volume is in the normal range. It is bullish. We are well above the top of our trade level, but we do have a higher high. I will still be buying this thing on any pullback that I can find. Obviously, the previous 2 days we were down 5% in one day and down 6% the other day. Those were great days to buy relative to where you were. But even if you bought on the 7th, you're at 387, and today you're at 378, so you're still down money. The most important thing to me when it comes to looking at a move like this is seeing what is the 1 month change and what is the 3 month change. The reason why is because, yes, while we're at 150% over 1 month, that is a really good thing if you've been holding for that 150%. But the chance that it's going to go up another 150% from here is very unlikely. Usually what's going to happen is this will consolidate a little bit. And as you can already see, it was at 160, 186, and now we're down at 150. I wouldn't be surprised to see that go well below 50. To be up 50% in 1 month is still a great move. So, I mean, you could probably see this thing consolidate for 2 to 3 weeks. The 3 month being at 148%, that's just too much. Just the way that the market works, it's just a difficult thing to do. Now, I do expect that there could be some moves because obviously this is essentially a penny stock. It's only $3.78, but you have to just be honest with yourself about what you think can happen. Let's go ahead and look at BigBear.AI. BigBear.AI continues to be a stock that I cover. It's very regularly in the top or the most active stocks in Yahoo Finance. If we're looking over the previous 9 months, while we've seen some massive moves, it really hasn't done a lot. Now, I'm hoping that we can see the range start to go higher here. The price does continue to essentially consolidate after it had that breakout above the top of the range. The bottom of the range is coming up, so I do like that look, because if you look at what you've seen back here, you'll get a huge expansion. The top of the range comes down, the bottom of the range comes up. The concerning thing would be if you do flip bearish. I don't really consider even this portion here where you are bearish in August to be truly bearish, only because the type of the move, the size of the move we're talking about is so massive that even though you would consider that this was bearish, and when I say you'd consider, I mean my system would consider it to be bearish, I don't necessarily consider that to be anything other than essentially just like a turnover in the shares. You're getting a really big change in the profile of the individual stock and the market itself, as well as this individual security. So, like, obviously, we're starting to see small caps break out. We're starting to see things like gold continue to break out. We're seeing rates go higher. So the market is transitioning itself from a macro environment, and Big Bear AI is probably just more at the whims of the factors than it is anything. The thing that I like to say or I like to see is higher volume as you're starting to get moves. What I need to see here is I need to see it close probably above like 890. I'd love to see it close above the top of this, which was 974, but right now I just like to clear this. If the high here it looks like was 848, I need to close at 850. You see it close at 850 because you can see on the 23rd the high there was 848 as well. So you know that that level means something. So I'd like to see it close at 850 on a high volume. Right now we are well above the 50% line. We're at 59% on the daily sentiment indicator. On the 15-day sentiment indicator, we are falling, but you'd expect that with these kind of moves. We're still at 54%. The volatility looks like it's rounding. So hopefully we get a falling volatility, because again, I continue to say falling volatility with price and with a negative correlation, which you can see that it's now fallen down to essentially what is non-predictive here at like 4 basis points. This kind of move where you get falling volatility and negative correlation, the price would essentially go sideways to up. It'd be perfect. Now, if we're looking at the close, you can see we've got a green background, which means essentially it's in the middle of its normal range. Same thing with the volume. Now, the bullishness here, I do still believe in, but you always know that whatever we're going to see when that volatility really starts to fall and that range gets narrow, this thing has sometimes where it can go bearish. So we'll want to watch that. As I'm starting to think about this thing potentially going bearish in the near future, just as consolidation, I'd want to watch it around the trade level. I mean, we're still up, it looks like about 60 cents or 70 cents away from there. So the higher low is really positive. The top of the range is coming down because yesterday was at 886, even 894. Now we're at 877. So that's not great. But if we start to look at the rolling returns, the positive thing is that we're coming down in the 1 month rolling return. The 3 month is only at 5.2%. So that's actually really positive, because You want, well, how I like to buy as it's flipping from negative to positive, or when it's just slightly flip positive, because those are the setups that you want. And then all of a sudden you get a huge day where it's up like 6.7% the next day, right? Like those are the type of moves that I'm looking for. So the 3 month is actually kind of a positive look to me. Let's go ahead and look at Rigetti Computing. Now, Rigetti Computing is a stock that I've continued to cover because this thing has all of the markings of something that is going to capture the popular imagination of every single stock market participant. The reason why is you go from very low volatility, you see a very light bull market to a huge explosion where the price continues to climb, the top of the range continues to climb, the price is following along. It is again breaking out above, consolidating, and then breaking out above, which I love to see. When I look at the overall chart, this is just essentially a thing of beauty, especially when you add in these higher highs with this higher volume back here. The March moves on with an army behind it, which I love to see. Now, if we're looking at the bear bullish sentiment, this is a bit too much, in my opinion. We're at 70.8. This indicator generally won't go above 70. When you get into penny stocks, which this is not a penny stock, but if you get really extreme moves where things are probably like they're not manipulated, but they're more influenced by like options or a secondary market, you'll start to see things that maybe could get to the low 70s, like 71, 72, 73. I have seen some extremes at like 77, 78, but the 50% line isn't necessarily where it has to go, but it does mean revert. Like you have to think that when it comes to a market, it should be 50% bullish, 50% bearish, right? I mean, it's really only, it's like a casino. That small edge of what gains, it can be 1%, 2%, 3%. That is really what drives something. So being at 70% bullishness, it's a little much. Even on the 15-day, you can see we're starting to come down. Still at 66.9. And the volatility, historic when you're thinking about this stock itself. So you got to expect that's going to fall at some point. When we look at the actual data, we have been moderately high or significantly high most of the time in this stock, even extremely high back on the 19th. So when we look at where we are from a range perspective, it's 51.8, we're at 47.11. The trade level is way down at 31.45, and we do have a higher high, but again, I'm going to look at the 1 month and the 3 month. These are just so extremely stretched that I would suspect that we're going to see some sort of mean reversion. I mean, over 1 year, this thing is up 6,000%. I mean, while that's great and that's cool, that's like Bitcoin, but it is an actual company. So unless you are selling to every single human that's ever existed, or you're expanding by 2, 3, 4, 500% quarter over quarter or year over year, I don't know how it's sustainable. But the market's doing crazy things. So we will find out. Let's go ahead and look at Denison Mines. Denison Mines is one of my favorite ones that I've been looking at in the past few days. Denison Mines continues to be one of those low volatility, high bull market kind of moves, right? Like when you look at it, there's really nothing special here. But essentially, even though I was bearish back here in terms of my model, that was the transition. It looks like Liberation Day or whatever that was, essentially was the beginning of this commodity run. I don't even know what Denison Mines necessarily mines, but when we looked at it's been very, very bullish. It's essentially been pretty low volatility. The volume has been supporting these higher breakouts, even though you're getting weird kind of moves where you're getting high wicks and it's not really moving a ton, just kind of marches on. When we look at the overall sentiment, we're at, it looks like 66 or 63.6% sentiment. That's positive here in Denison Mines. On the 15-day, we're at 67.4. We're starting to see the volatility roll over. It's kind of flaring up a little bit, but I'd expect it to continue to roll over. If you get a negative correlation with the volatility falling for a long period of time, that can be a very sustained, like low volatility bull market. I'm a huge fan of those. If you've watched enough of my videos, the thing that I like now is we are back in the middle of the range. The problem is the range is so small, right? This thing was moderately high when it was at 286 and 285, and now it's at 283, and we're back in the middle of the range. The volume is there, the bullishness is there. We're very close to the trade level. We're getting a higher low. I'd like to see the top of the range break out even higher. It's really indicative of the volatility as the top of the range starts to come down. Now, if we look at the 1 day to the 1 year, things are looking okay. We're up 16.6% over the past month, nearly 40% over the past 3 months, but we're coming down from where we were at 60%. So I could see this probably come down to like 20 or like 15. This could maybe come down to like 2. And then we could get a nice sustained move from there. I'm not sure if you need news, you need something with the Fed. I don't know. But the way I'm seeing it in Denison Mines is things can definitely improve from where we are, but it's in a nice sustained bull market. Go ahead and look at Bitfarm. Now, Bitfarms, I definitely covered yesterday, and based on what we've been looking at so far in this video, this has all the exact same markings as what we're looking at in Rigetti Computing, where you see essentially low volatility, a complete change in character, a breakout above the top of the range, consolidation, and then continuation. Now, we are back above the top of the range today, which was obviously a beautiful day. What was this up 4.25%? I like the move that we're seeing, especially considering the fact that while we're seeing what is probably like a very nice chart to someone, very strong volume with it as well. If we're looking at the daily sentiment indicator, we're at 67.4%. That's very, very strong. I would expect that to mean revert. So I don't know how much further I expect this specific move to go, but I do think that there's a very strong bullish trend here. We're at 59.2 even on the 15-day. We look at the volatility, we are starting to crest, probably going to start rolling over. We can see the correlation is starting to fall as well. Would love to see the volatility roll over and the correlation go negative. That'd be fantastic. We look at the move, things have really improved. I mean, on the third, which is I'm assuming that, no, not the first day of the week, but Friday last week was 301. Today it's 417. The 301 is now the trade level. The low signal on the range is a higher low, as well as we have a higher high at 417. So we're at the very top of the range. The problem here, again, very similar to what I've talked about in some of the other ones, the 1 month and the 3 month are just too high. You're at 300%. Now, this one has kind of defied the odds. It was at 300% before. It fell back down to, it looks like was the low was 151 over the past 3 months. Now we're back at the 300%. It could still go down to 151 and kind of just hang out for a little bit. So I'd be very curious what's going to happen. Let's go ahead and look at, I actually want to look at Path because it looks like Path was up 18.81% today. Path is going to be an interesting one. I have not looked at Path at all. So what I like to see already is that we've had low volatility, essentially a very tight range. We've seen a bullishness, a bearishness, and now we're getting a nice breakup above the top of the range, consolidation, breakup above the top of the range, consolidation. It's on huge volume. Today you saw 98 million shares traded, which is obviously well above the average, which I think is like 13.7 million shares traded over the past 9 months. Now, the nice thing about this too is that we are just starting to see it break out above the 50% line. We're at 55.3% bullishness. For me, this is the really important indicator because obviously the market can have 100%. It has 100% bullishness or bearishness. Is what percentage of each do you get? So here it's at 55.3 in terms of bullishness. We look at the 15-day. This thing is also showing very positive, but not super overstretched. It's only 56.8. The volatility, I'm considering that fact that we saw a gap up, so that's why the volatility is starting to break out or continuing to. Even though I would have honestly thought that the volatility would start to fall, but you do like to see when volatility is kind of cresting and then you see a massive move higher in the direction of the trend. I'd like to see the volatility start to fall and then the correlation go negative as well. That would be really, really good. But when we look at where we are, we're extremely high already. I mean, you can see just on the color guide, we're extremely high. The volume was significantly high. We're bullish, and we are so far away from the trade level. We are way above the top of the range. Yes, we have a higher high, but I would expect that we're going to see a little bit of consolidation here. The thing that would be against what I just said is that the 1 month is only up 58%, and the 3 month is only up 49%. Now, I don't suspect that it's going to be up a ton more, but these are what I would consider to be the signals of a very strong potential bull market that could last for a while. Go ahead and look at it just on a longer time frame to see what it's been like. I mean, the problem that you have here is back in 2021, this thing was up at $50, and now it's not. So you're still always going to have overhead supply in terms of people selling, but I do like the moves that I've seen. Let's go ahead and see. Actually, what I decided is I am going to end the video here. If you want to follow me, go ahead and follow me on Twitter. I post sometimes on there. You can go ahead and you can always like, or actually you can subscribe here on YouTube. I have 379 videos, only 173 subscribers. I think this content. If you want to actually participate in something that I have, I do have a crypto newsletter, all that kind of stuff. It comes out every single morning at 6:15 a.m. on the East Coast. If you don't want to try it, you can do the free one. Comes out on Saturdays at 11 a.m. There is a 7-day free trial, so it's only $10 a month, and then you'll end up getting essentially what you get to see here if you go to the crypto page, where you'll end up getting all of the levels for each of the individual cryptos. It's going to show you essentially where it is from the top of the range. I think the most important part for me is usually where it is from the top of the range and how close it is to its trade level. I go ahead and usually what I'll do is, as I watch it, I'll pay attention to which of the cryptos are bullish and then which are green in terms of where are they relative to their actual price. I've got the exact same price color guide or close volume guide that I have on the other pages if you're looking at any of them as well. You can see right now as we look at all the crypto from every single thing, Ethereum, Ripple, Solana, Dogecoin, the Graph, Cardano, Bitcoin Cash, Avalanche, everything is bearish except for Bitcoin at the moment. Now, Bitcoin is at moderately high. It is well above its trade level, which is at 116. The top of the sell top, though, is at 129. So you could see a move up to there. It is 5.79% away from the top of the range. So I think that those are very good signals if I think about where I want to allocate my money. Very curious about if we're going to see some moves. It looks like if the rest of the crypto market essentially is still in the normal zone too. There's only Litecoin above its trade level. Bitcoin Cash is above its trade level, which is really nice to see. The Graph and then Solana. So most of the things that we're looking at, and Ethereum is top of its trade level. Most of the things that we're seeing are bearish. They're underneath their trade level. Crypto right now looks like it's essentially a graveyard, except for the one light that is on, which is Bitcoin, as it continues to show its global dominance. Now, again, feel free to subscribe, like, subscribe. I'll talk to you soon.